What if I told you that deep down inside every one of us lies a capacity for cruelty you can't even imagine? That with just a little push, the kindest person you know could become a monster? This isn't a horror movie plot. This is the true story of the 1971 Stanford prison experiment. A study that was supposed to explore the psychology of power, but instead revealed something terrifying about human nature. Imagine this. A makeshift prison built in the basement of Stanford University's psychology department. 24 mentally healthy, well-adjusted male college students are chosen. They're randomly split into two groups, prisoners and guards. The prisoners are arrested at their homes by real police officers, booked and thrown into cells. The guards are given uniforms, mirrored sunglasses to hide their eyes, and a single instruction: maintain order. The experiment was scheduled to last 2 weeks. It didn't even make it to one. The transformation was chillingly fast. Within the first 24 hours, the dynamic shifted from a simple role-playing exercise to a genuine power struggle. The guards, who were just average students a day before, started to embrace their roles with a disturbing enthusiasm. They began by waking the prisoners up in the middle of the night for head counts, forcing them to do push-ups as punishment for minor infractions. But it escalated quickly. The guards started using psychological torture. They took away the prisoners' beds, forcing them to sleep on the cold, hard concrete floor. They stripped them naked as a form of humiliation. They denied them basic sanitation, making them clean toilets with their bare hands. When prisoners rebelled, the guards would blast them with fire extinguishers to subdue them. Remember, these weren't criminals or sadists. They were ordinary college kids who had been given a taste of absolute power. The lead researcher, Philip Zimbardo, took on the role of the prison superintendent. He became so absorbed in his role that he lost his objective scientific perspective. He saw the prisoners not as student volunteers, but as actual inmates who needed to be controlled. When parents called, worried about their sons, Zimbardo would reassure them, downplaying the severity of what was happening, even as he watched the guards' behavior become more and more abusive. He was no longer a researcher studying a phenomenon. He was a part of it, enabling the very cruelty he was supposed to be observing. The mental toll on the prisoners was immediate and severe. One prisoner, known as Prisoner 8612, had a complete breakdown after only 36 hours. He started screaming, crying uncontrollably, and flying into fits of rage. He was suffering from what was described as an acute emotional disturbance. The research team initially thought he was faking it to get out, but his anguish was real. He had to be released. Doctors who later analyzed his case believe he may have suffered a permanent neurological shift, a psychotic break, triggered by the intense stress and dehumanization. He went from a happy, healthy student to a shattered man in less than 2 days. His breakdown was a terrifying warning sign, but the experiment continued. As the days went on, the prison environment grew more toxic. The guards' creativity for cruelty seemed to have no bounds. They pitted prisoners against each other, creating a system of good cells and bad cells. They would reward those who were compliant and punish the entire group for the defiance of one. This broke the prisoners' solidarity, making them distrust each other and preventing them from organizing any resistance. The guards were masters of psychological manipulation, turning the prisoners against one another and solidifying their own control. The prisoners, in turn, became increasingly passive, helpless, and depressed. Some even started siding with the guards against fellow prisoners who stepped out of line. They had internalized their roles. They weren't students playing a part anymore. They were prisoners. Then there are the rumors, the whispers of what wasn't included in the official report. The legend of Room 202, according to some unconfirmed accounts and theories that have swirled for decades, there was a secret room, separate from the main prison block. This was supposedly where the most extreme psychological conditioning took place, away from the main cameras. The story suggests that guards would take problematic prisoners to room 202 for special treatment, employing tactics so harsh and so psychologically damaging that Zimbardo and his team allegedly scrubbed the data from the final report. Why? The theory goes that the results were too damning. They didn't just suggest that power corrupts. They proved that humans are, by their very nature, predatory when given the chance. That the line between good and evil is not just thin, it's situational. While Zimbardo's team has never confirmed the existence of this room, the rumor persists, adding a dark layer of mystery to an already disturbing story. So what stopped it? It wasn't the researchers. It wasn't the guards having a crisis of conscience. It was an outsider. Christina Maslake, a fellow psychologist and Zimbardo's girlfriend at the time, was brought in to conduct interviews. When she saw the conditions, the filth, the guards' cruelty, the broken state of the prisoners, she was horrified. She confronted Zimbardo, telling him, "What you are doing to these boys is terrible." It was her moral outrage, her fresh perspective from outside the toxic bubble of the experiment, that finally snapped Zimbardo out of his role as prison superintendent. He realized how far things had gone, how he and his team had become complicit in the abuse. On the 6th day, he called a halt to the 2-week experiment. The Stanford prison experiment has become one of the most controversial studies in the history of psychology. Critics point to major ethical flaws, researcher bias, and the possibility that the participants were simply acting in a way they thought the researchers wanted them, to a concept called demand characteristics. Zimbardo himself has been accused of coaching the guards to be tougher, essentially scripting the outcome. But even with these criticisms, the experiment's core lesson remains deeply unsettling. It showed how powerful situations can be in shaping our behavior, overriding our personal morals and values. It demonstrated the Lucifer effect, a term Zimbardo coined to describe the process by which good people can be transformed into perpetrators of evil. The participants were forever changed. The guards were shocked by their own behavior, struggling to reconcile the person they were in the experiment with the person they thought they were. The prisoners carried the psychological scars for years. The experiment serves as a stark, timeless warning about the abuse of power, the fragility of the human psyche, and the ease with which we can lose our humanity. It forces us to ask a difficult question. If you were a guard, what would you have done? And if you were a prisoner, how would you have survived? Think about that. Thanks for watching. If you found this dive into the dark side of psychology as fascinating as I did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories that shape our world. See you next time.